I went to Japan for the first time ever last year. I've been wanting to go there for such a long time, and I couldn't wait to visit some art supply stores in Tokyo. I always love checking out what different art material offerings other countries have. In Japan, I especially wanted to stock up on Turner acrylic gouache paint. Since it's a Japanese brand, there's a wider selection of it there than in the United States. And it's also so much less expensive, maybe $1 per tube after a conversion from yen. I bought a nice little arrangement right here. I also brought with me a stash of small canvases with a toned surface and a compact set of acrylics with the goal of doing a few little paintings, or so-called paint sketches, as we moved along the route. Japan certainly has a lot of visual candy that offers painting opportunities, or so I thought. But yet, as it can often happen on vacations, we were running around so much between cities and all the sites that the painting didn't happen as actively as I hoped it would. Oh, here's a little ticket from a Japanese temple. I created this one nice little drawing during a long pause at a lily pond on the grounds of one of the temples, and that was about it. Plus, some temple areas had a no painting sign, which I thought was pretty funny. They're after me, but it was meant to deter congestion. Another issue was that both me and my husband got some weird bad allergy to basically Japanese air. Despite Japan's super clean environment and most pristine houses and gardens, I think we might have been affected by cedar pollen. Anyway, it irritated our throats to a level of consistent, painful coughing, and then the allergy, poof, disappeared the day after we returned home. What about you? Have you been to Japan? Let me know in comments how it went for you, and also tell me if you had these types of allergy setbacks there. I really would love to know. But then, on our last day, as we were in Osaka, about 3 hours before we had to go to the airport, I see a flyer in the metro advertising an exhibit by Kawase Hasui. He happens to be one of Japan's most important and prolific printmakers. I'm thinking, great, I wish I could see this. And then we come upon a building with the same poster in a window, and there it is! There's the exhibit! The show was very expensive, and Kawase Hasui's works are simply stunning. One thing that immediately struck me about Hasui's prints is his mastery of atmosphere, especially in low-light scenes. He amazed me with dusk, moonlit nights, and those intricate snowy landscapes that feel chilly just looking at them. His ability to use limited color palettes with such emotional depth is just breathtaking. Let me tell you, standing in front of those prints was like being transported to another time and place. And here, back in my studio, I'm channeling his influence into this acrylic painting of a nighttime tree. I started with a drawing with my usual black outlines. I wanted to paint overhanging tree trunks that resemble Japanese gardens a little bit with intertwining branches. Then I went over the trunks with some quinacridone violet and started to fill in the sky with cerulean blue mixed with Indian yellow, a little bit of phthalo blue, and also ultramarine. It's always so fun to fill this negative space with cooler tones against its complementary, vibrant underpainting. Hasui's hallmark was his ability to depict landscapes not just as they appeared, but as they felt. He traveled extensively across Japan, often sketching places that were relatively unknown or overlooked, which later became celebrated for their quiet beauty. His woodcut prints portrayed rural temples, secluded villages, and snowy mountaintops, offering viewers a glimpse of Japan, both timeless and serene. Kawase Hasui wasn't born into the art world. He started working in a dry goods store, but his passion for art persisted. In his 20s, he formally trained in painting, initially inspired by Western-style realism, before he found his calling in traditional Japanese woodblock printing. He became a key figure in shin-hanga movement, a revival of woodblock printing that reimagined the classic style for a modern audience. And here in the painting, I then went over my water with a darker phthalo blue color to aid in the mood of creating this evening scene. The tree branches needed to get more intricate and the sky needed to get a little bit brighter. I wanted to capture that magical dusk hour where the stars have just started glowing, but the daylight has not fully disappeared yet. A greenish glow in the sky mixed up from my yellows and blues is creating this effect. When I go through the first pass, that initial layer of my painting, and start working on the second and third, this becomes my favorite part of putting that tiny little detail in the negative space between all the tree branches, making each piece of sky looking like a slightly different area of a quilt. My water now has to reflect that glow from the sky, and so do the rocks. I'm keeping my mountains and tree trunks in the red zone to give them a complementary offset from the cool hues of everything else. Now I'm getting into the third layer of little brush markings at the horizon, or maybe the fourth layer? I can't keep track. My brush strokes are getting smaller and smaller because now I want to show that texture and the history that is building up on my painting. I want the previous layers to be also visible in some areas so that the transformation from the bottom layer to the top layer can be observed. Now I'm setting up a bunch of different glowing areas where the stars will eventually illuminate my sky. So what really resonated with me about Hasui's life story was his sheer dedication. When he met a prominent publisher, Shozaburo Watanabe, who was a pioneer in reviving the woodblock tradition, his career really took off. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. In 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake destroyed much of the Watanabe's workshop, along with most of Hasui's original woodblocks. Can you imagine losing so much of your life's work in one moment? Hasui's response to that tragedy was to get moving. He was basically faced with a choice, to give in to despair or rebuild. So he chose to frame the event as a catalyst for transformation. Hasui hit the road, traveling across Japan to sketch and capture scenes that could serve as inspiration for new prints. And his travels were not always glamorous. We're talking about pre-modern Japan here, navigating by foot, train, and ferries, sometimes facing harsh weather and rugged conditions. But he pushed on because he knew these landscapes deserved to be immortalized. Here on my painted sky, after a place for it has been established, each star is just a little white dab on a canvas, repeated many, many times all over. Finally, the mood is coming together for me. I'm seeing the contrast that I really wanted to create with starlight here. Inspired by the intricacy of detail in those Japanese shin-hanga prints, I decided to add some extra skinny outlines in my tree branches. And this is where my Turner acrylic gouache comes in. Acrylic gouache has low viscosity, so it's pretty fluid, but it is also very opaque, and it goes on so smoothly on top of my acrylic paints. To connect the color of the outlines to the bottom, I added some of the same hue into the blades of grass. One of my favorite quirky facts about Hasui is that he had this almost obsessive eye for detail. He'd visit a location multiple times to study the changing light and shadow, just so he could get it perfect. And that's not all. The guy was a nocturnal artist at heart. Many of his most famous works capture night scenes so well, they make you feel like you're standing there in the cool, quiet dark. If you ever thought, I can't get inspired until the conditions are perfect. Well, Hasui was out there proving you don't wait for it, you chase it down, okay? While Hasui is known for his winter scenes, he also adored depicting rainy days. He was obsessed with how light and shadow played on wet streets and reflections on water. That's something I'm trying to capture here with the cool, softer glow in this painting. Starlight dropping its reflection onto water. Can't forget reflection of the red mountains either. Then Hasui experienced another setback. During the war years, there was Japan-China War in the 30s, and then, as we know, World War II, when he fell into a slump and wasn't able to focus on any artistic production, understandably so. For a few years, he was troubled by his inability to escape a creative rut, and so he, once more, slowly revived his inspirations through travel. This time, he went on a tour of Korea at the invitation of some fellow artists. There, he was enchanted by the landscapes and customs of foreign land and produced a series of sketches that grounded his new phase into post-war bolder composition style, like this right here. And back in my painting here, I'm putting final lighter touch-ups on the tree trunks. Putting this blue hue in the shadows of tree branches decreases the contrast and gives them the essence of the night. And right here are the finishing touches. The tree inspired by the melancholy depictions of nature by the great Kawase Hasui. Learning about Hasui's legacy, the irony of my lack of painting in Japan is not lost on me. This guy overcame incredible challenges just to be able to perfect his images in real environments. And now I'm using a silly allergy and travel overwhelm as an excuse not to make more art on the go. Well, my true art muse, though, always waits for me at home. And she's right here, hanging out by my side in my studio. The woodblock print market experienced an incredible revival in the years following World War II. Demand for traditional Japanese prints by the occupation forces led to an unexpected woodblock printing boom, and Hasui's works were especially favored for their mix of traditional techniques and modern composition. In 1956, Kawase Hasui was named a living national treasure, the highest honor an artist could receive in post-war Japan. He was the first artist to be granted this prestigious title, and it was such an honor for me to see this show, all because of the little flyer on a subway wall. We spent a couple of hours wandering through the exhibit and cut it really close to our departure time for the train to the airport. But what a way to wrap up my journey to Japan. So here we are, one tree under a soft, starry night, inspired by the incredible Hasui. His work teaches us so much about the importance of perseverance, traveling to seek new perspectives, and finding beauty in simplicity. I would say this painting reminds me of the joy of slowing down, letting your art breathe, and connecting with the world around you. You know where to find me to access more detailed art video lessons and all kinds of goodies that I can email you to give you painting support. Links are in the description below. And meanwhile, here's another video for you to watch.